I'm Andrew, and welcome back to Community Design Review, where we take a look at some of the best designs from the custom Magic community. Our first shoutout this week is Queen's Dismissal. This looks like a reference to Beseech the Queen and that whole cycle of cards. It's 2 or blue, 2 or blue, 2 or blue for an instant. Exile target spell with converted mana cost less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast Queen's Dismissal. Interesting. So it gives you a reason to want to spend more mana on this. On the low end, it's very weak. You can spend blue, blue, blue to counter a 3 mana spell or less, as opposed to cancel, which lets you counter any spell for a less restrictive cost. But I think the reason for that is that at the high end, you can counter just about any spell in any colored deck. This could be played solely as a 6-drop in a non-blue deck, giving them access to counter spells. So this card is a bit weak, but it is a really cool design. Notably, it doesn't actually counter spells, it exiles them, which is very functionally similar, but it can get rid of uncounterable spells, and it won't leave behind graveyard fodder, which does give this card a bit of an edge. Our second shoutout is Wonderseeker. It's a 2/2 creature, Elf Scout, for green-blue with Awestruck. Whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Wonderseeker. Untap it. And it also taps to untap target land. Wow, that's powerful. So a 2/2 for 2 that ramps you is fine, but this one grows whenever you cast a 5 mana spell or higher, and then untaps. So if you played this with a spell that can reduce its own mana cost, you could easily break it. For example, turn 1 Misty Rainforest, crack Thought Scour, turn 2 Wonderseeker, turn 3 Hooting Mandrills, untap Wonderseeker and attack for 4. Now this might actually be a fair card in Modern, the format I appear to be playing, but that's just one example off the top of my head. This feels very strong. Still, it's a very cool design and takes green-blue in a different direction than just wantonly drawing cards with only the approach of the banhammer to instill hope in an otherwise dark and dismal world ruled by monstrous pieces of cardboard that never should have seen the light of day. Our first meme card for this week is TLDR. 3 white for an enchantment that says, ignore the rules text after the first full stop for all cards. Okay, does that mean after the first period or the first paragraph? Probably the first period. Oh, it says full stop because you could also end a sentence with a question mark or exclamation point. Not in black bordered Magic, but this is the silver border world, so anything goes. So yeah, you only pay attention to the first sentence, and of course this card only has 1 sentence, which is perfect. Actually, it might be funnier if it had a bunch of other crazy effects as well that wouldn't end up mattering because of its first effect. Now this is a really funny idea and begs the question, how are you going to break it? Form of the Dragon comes to mind, though that's really expensive. Transcendence would make you immortal. Aggressive mining... Our second meme card is the Magic Gathering. Sounds familiar for some reason. It costs 1 red, green, white for an enchantment that says, all creatures are creatures in addition to their other types for each creature beyond the first in their art. Creatures have double strike. Creatures have menace. Creatures have trample. So the idea is to play this with a bunch of cards that have 4 or more creatures in the art to give them a bunch of abilities. Fun fact, there are 11,000-ish creatures in Magic, and I decided to go through all of them to see how many have 4 or more creatures in the art. And I made it all the way to B in white before I gave up. But the best options I found in that range were Audacious Infiltrator and Archon of Sun's Grace. Anyhow, this is a very cool design, and I'd love to try it out in a cube sometime. And on to our top 5. Number 5 this week is Antediluvian Ark. Antediluvian means before the flood, so this is clearly a reference to Noah's Ark. Let's take a look. It costs 1 mana for an artifact that says, at the end of your turn, you may exile 2 target creatures you control that share a creature type until Antediluvian Ark leaves the battlefield. Okay, so you're tucking away your creatures for safekeeping. You do have to have 2 creatures that share a creature type in order to use this ability. And then 3 white, destroy all creatures, then exile Antediluvian Ark. Activate only as a sorcery. Wow, okay, the flavor here is spot on. You slowly collect creatures, 2 of a kind, and then they're protected from the coming Wrath of God effect. The most striking thing about this is how elegantly it's designed. After the Wrath, you exile the Ark, which returns the exiled creatures to the battlefield. That is deceptively simple. I've tried to make a board wipe before that exempts certain permanents, and it's trickier than it sounds to make it work smoothly. This is an incredible design from both a flavor and a mechanical perspective. Number 4 is Planar Surveyor. It's a 1/1 creature, human scout for white. It has vigilance and non-basic lands are legendary, okay? So you can only have one of each non-basic land. So if this comes out after you've already played multiples of a land, each player's going to have to sacrifice any duplicates that they may have. Now that seems like the sort of ability that would be tricky to play around at first, but once it becomes part of the meta, you just figure out how to work around it. It is an interesting idea, and as a hate bear ability, white is definitely the place for it. At number 3, we have War Council. It costs 2 white for a sorcery. Each opponent draws a card. You draw a card for each opponent. Okay, so this is another take on white card draw, and I think it's a pretty solid one. This is useless in 1v1s because you're actually just putting your opponent up a card. But in EDH, the format that most needs white card advantage, it works out well. And this feels like the sort of draw that's at home in white, so I think it's doing a good job of filling the role it was designed for. At number 2, we have Laid Back Sellsword. It's a 4/5 creature, human warrior for 1 black. It enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. Sacrifice a treasure or food to untap it. Okay, so that's good flavor. She's a lazy mercenary. She won't do anything unless you pay her, but if you do, her stats are incredible. There are 2 main ways I would use this in a deck. Either get aggressive, dropping this on turn 2, and then making sure I have a token to feed her every turn, or in a control deck, just untap her once and keep her on defense until you're in a winning position. Now this is a very interesting design, and I'd love to try it in a limited format with some food and treasure themes. And our number 1 card this week is the greatest of all time. It's a 2/1 legendary creature, Goat God for white. It has Indestructible. Well, this is a pun on greatest of all time being abbreviated as GOAT. But honestly, the name fits because if printed, this would probably be the greatest creature of all time. This card is staggeringly overpowered. In all of Magic, there are only 28 creatures that have Indestructible unconditionally. You want to know their average converted mana cost? Go ahead, take a guess. Wrong! It's 7. The cheapest of these are Darksteel Mirror and Predator Ooze at 3 mana. And just look at them. Indestructible is an extremely powerful ability because it makes your creatures intensely difficult to remove or attack through. Sure, Goat is legendary, so you can only have 1, but that's still so good. This needs to cost at least 2 mana, probably 3. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and for contributing to the Custom Magic community. If you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and check out the Custom Magic subreddit. We'll be back next Tuesday for another design review.